All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher, joined by Brad Thomas. Thanks everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. We've got a phenomenal game of football tonight to break down. Bears, Commanders. Look forward to telling your grandkids about this one. And then after that, we will jump into the NFC East, which has the huge Sunday night game between the Eagles and the Cowboys, which will shape that division. And then we'll jump into our favorite Western Conference NBA division bet. But first, Brad, let's talk about Bears Commanders because we have to. It's Commanders -1. The total is down to a magnificent 38 flat. What are you looking for in this game?
The line movement on this game was kind of interesting. It went back and forth, kind of to zero for both teams. Ultimately settled on the Commanders. And while I do think the Commanders are the right side, just because they're so much better offensively and both defenses are terrible, I'd rather just look at props. Props are a little bit more predictable, and sometimes props can kind of beat game flow, where you don't need to predict the game flow correctly. So the first prop that I'm looking at, Justin Fields over 7.5 rushing attempts or carries, depending on what the book has it labeled as. Justin Fields has hit this in all but one game. The game that he didn't hit it, he landed on 7 exactly. He's one of those kind of players, especially with this bad offense and subpar receiving core, who would rather use his gift. And his gift is his mobility, his legs, his vision in running. This is a play that I'll probably play all season until books adjust. Much like Jalen Hurts carries, the books finally adjusted it closer to 9.5 instead of that 7.5 number. But I really love that. And the next one, and I'm going to ladder this one all the way up, Brian Robinson, rookie out of Alabama, the one who just came off the IR after having a gunshot wound, to score 1 touchdown plus 200. Then I'm going to go up to 2 and to 3. He's out carrying, even though he's going to be on a snap limit. He's going to out carry Gibson, and he's their goal line threat. Like I said, these defenses aren't good. I feel like this is finally a chance for them to get some actually forward momentum towards the end zone while you're in the red zone from the running game.
Yeah, I think with Brian Robinson, they are going to go out of their way to give him the ball for a lot of reasons, close to the goal line. Like the only good thing to come out of this Commanders season so far is the Brian Robinson story, and on prime time. I mean, if they get it to the 3, they're going to run it 4 times, and it's going to be Brian Robinson all 4 times. So I do like that. That's a very difficult thing to price for books, and I think that at plus 200, anytime touchdown scorer, that's a bet. I'm with you on Justin Fields. I like that. I also think that Fields over 168.5 passing yards is worth a look. He's gone over that the past 2 games. I think at some point, like at the start of the season, that line, he was being set around 220. And at some point, you have to regress back to those expectations because, I mean, they have been throwing it a little bit more the past 2 weeks. The Commanders have a terrible pass defense. They're actually slightly better against the run. So I do think that Fields should go over that number. And if you're the Bears, like at some point, the only thing that really matters out of this season is figuring out whether Justin Fields is the guy going forward. And if they're not going to let him throw against the Commanders, then when are they ever going to let him throw? I also like Carson Wentz to throw a pick at minus 110, which has happened 4 of the past 5 games. I think, and also he's Carson Wentz. So I think that with Eddie Jackson returning to 2018 form, I think that the Bears secondary is more than capable of picking off at least one Carson Wentz pass, which he is prone to throw up for grabs. In terms of the side and the total, there's nothing I like too much about the total, which is now, like I mentioned, 38 after being 40 earlier in the week. If I was forced to take a side, I would take the Commanders, just because I think offensively they have a lot more of a ceiling. I think this defense should at some point show something as well. Like this was a top 4 defense in the NFL 2 years ago and still have, a lot of the same personnel. So look, the bar for this game is just to be better than Colts Broncos. I'm not even sure it's going to clear that bar, to be honest. But I do think that Wentz with his weapons, like there's still Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel. They have talented running backs in Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson for all his sins, that there should be enough scoring here to be able to outscore the Bears offense, which is stuck in 1926. So you're with me on the Commanders. If you have to take a side, you'd be on them.
I am with you on the Commanders, and I'm going to be with you on Carson Wentz. When I see a quarterback like Wentz to throw a pick, I generally like to wait until like 1 or 2 series into the game because then books will have it live for plus money, which is kind of one of my favorite things to do.
Yep, I like that. And we have a note from our researcher, Johnny VTV, that 10 of the last 14 Thursday night football games have gone under, which feels that feels light. Feels like it's been 14 out of 14, such as Thursday night football. All right, before we get into the NFC East, if you want more betting, DFS, and fantasy advice right before kickoff tonight, tune into our NFL on NBC Sports YouTube channel at 7 p.m. Eastern as Vaughn Dalzell, Lawrence Jackson, and Kyle Dvoracek answer your questions prior to kickoff between the Commanders and Bears. And if you do recall, last week on that show, Vaughn gave out a 70-1 shot of no touchdowns in Colts Broncos that did cash. So be sure to tune in to that. All right, NFC East, which the Commanders are a part of, but there's a lot more interesting things going on in that division. The Eagles are minus 250. The Cowboys, who just will not die, are plus 250. The Giants are 12-1, and then the Commanders, few optimists, are 100-1. Who do you like in this division, Brad?
Yeah, I still like the Eagles. I mean, betting the Eagles has been profitable this season. Now the spreads are kind of catching up to them. But when I look ahead to their next 5 games, the one spread that kind of creeps out to me is Colts. They're a dog, +3, which is kind of weird. They have a top 10 defense, probably top 5 defense now. They're +9 in the turnover differential, and they have weapons. While I love the Giants story, I love it. I love betting on them against the spread. You just have to look at the weapons they have, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants don't make a playoff run and they lose a couple of shock games, like they lose to the Eagles and they lose to the Ravens, lose to the Jags, lose to the Seahawks. You could possibly start thinking about getting rid of Saquon Barkley. As much as it hurts, that's something that could be discussed. The Cowboys, listen, I don't love the Cowboys. They have a great pass rush, and that's all I like about the Cowboys. I didn't even like them at their price preseason, and I think this price is worse than their preseason price, and the Eagles look great. I just can't get behind it. Who are you on?
I would be on the Eagles as well at minus 250. If there is still any Eagles +3 at the Colts, which I think was the preseason look ahead line, then the books over that, jump all over that, because that's going to be like Eagles -3. Potentially at least. It's probably going to be bigger than that. I do think with the Cowboys that they are a little bit inflated at the moment, their perception, just because Cooper Rush just has never had to throw the ball because they've just been in positive game scripts the entire past month. Obviously, Dak Prescott is coming back, is going to increase their ceiling. But I think right now, people think that the Cowboys have, arguably the best defense in football. I don't think it's quite at that level. I think that Micah Parsons and how good he is individually is skewing the perception of the Cowboys defense. It's still a fantastic unit. It's a great defense, but I don't think it's to the level of, say, San Francisco or even Buffalo or potentially Tampa as well. So, and I think it's arguable as well that Philadelphia might have a better defense than Dallas, and they certainly have a better offense right now. So I think the problem is that if you're betting the Cowboys +250, like you really need to win this Sunday night game, and you're not getting Dak Prescott for that. And the market, which I agree with, is certainly bullish on Philadelphia. That line opened -5, which is too small. It's already up to -6. And I think there is some potential it could go even further, just because we haven't seen the real Cooper Rush yet. We haven't had the full Rush experience. Yeah. And the main thing with the Eagles is just their schedule. Like, they have the easiest remaining schedule in football. And I mean, you just look at after this week against the Cowboys and Cooper Rush, home to the Steelers, at the Texans, versus the Commanders at home, and then at the Colts as well, which isn't nearly as intimidating a game as it looked like. So they have a real chance to be 10-0. And there's a lot of interesting markets around the Eagles. -250, yes, I think that's value. It's also, there's not too many people who want to bet -250 division prices in week 6 because of how long your money is going to be tied up. So I think if you're looking to bet the Eagles, I still think that Nick Sirianni is the clear front runner for Coach of the Year, though he is pretty short right now. I think Jalen Hurts, Offensive Player of the Year, is an interesting look as well, though he is short too. So, look, I think the Eagles -250 is good parlay material more than anything into other futures bets. But is there anything else around the Eagles or this division that you're interested in betting on, Brad?
Not really. I looked so hard to see if I could kind of predict the Eagles' next loss. I see a lot of books hanging prices around those. If it would be an Eagles loss, I'd have to have somewhere that's going to have a line of at least 5.5. Those are the kind of the tricky lines where books set, where especially if they're on the road, where home dogs of 5.5 cover so much. But not really. I'm going to ride into the sunset on my Eagles division preseason bet. And I'm kind of mad at myself that when you talked about Sirianni for coach of the year, that I did not auto bet it. I fell behind on that. And then I also bet on Josh Allen as offensive player of the year instead of Jalen Hurts. So I'm kind of getting mad at myself and punching myself in the face.
No, you're all good. I still got to get Brian Dable beat. This guy refuses to lose his games, just keeps winning. The Giants are 4-1. It's ridiculous. And that's the concern if you're on Sirianni, is that, if Dable, even if he's not the deserving winner, just the New York bump is just so significant. As I mentioned the other day with Tom Thibodeau and Julius Randle a couple of years ago. So I do think that Sirianni does have that to worry about. But at the same time, like the Giants are not very good. Like, they are winning these games. They're not a great team. And a team of that level, they have a 4-game losing streak in them at any point. So I'm not too worried about Brian Dable, but it is something to monitor, and he is rightfully the second favorite. We do have a viewer question at the moment on Brian Robinson to get 40+ yards. Brad, are you interested in that bet?
I'm not interested in that bet. Brian Robinson, so they said they want to get him involved, but he's still going to be on a snap limit. And when you have a guy like Brian Robinson, who is a much different skill set than Gibson, and that's basically being the bull who can run between the tackles, you're going to want to use that skill set in the red zone. And so it could be a performance where he could get 2 touchdowns and cap at 35 yards. So no, I wouldn't. It would take a lot of breakaways for me to want to be kind of on that. And me being the resident Alabama guy, he doesn't break away too often.
No, he doesn't. He's not quite Breece Hall out there. Surprise PointsBet has his rushing attempts over under at 12.5, which seems pretty high to me, even if he's going to get more workload. Like, he's still, he's based off what he's coming off in the short week. You really want the Commanders to have a pretty healthy lead if you're betting the over on that. All right, before we get into our favorite Western Conference division bets in the NBA, the basketball season is almost here, and you can get a jump start on your draft with the RotoWorld Fantasy Draft Guide. Get player profiles, expert rankings, mock drafts, and more, and you can use the code HOOPS5 at checkout and get yours for just $5. Go to NBCSportsEdge.com/Edge Plus today. Okay, we've talked about the Atlantic Division in the East yesterday, Brad. Now we're going to talk about the Western Conference. Who is your favorite division bet in the West?
Mine's Pelicans plus 400. And listen, so first of all, I'm playing the price here. The price is just egregious and I have to play it. But we have to look at the teams in this division. I automatically think there's going to be regression in the Grizzlies side. First, it's so this line actually moved to plus 340 on PointsBet. Still playable. There's be regression on the Grizzly side. They lose Melton. They also face the health bug. What I mean by that is when you have a player like Ja Morant who is explosive and throws his body towards the rim because that's how he plays, health will start to be an issue. You saw it last season. And the difference between having a team without Ja Morant this season versus last season is everyone knows. There's no underestimating this team. This team will not be double-digit dogs without Ja Morant against teams like the Mavericks, where they end up going to win by 20 points. So we take some of that away. Next, this Pelicans team, with the addition of CJ McCollum, has been one of the best trades midseason. They start out 1-12 in the first 13 games. It's the second worst mark for any team to make the playoffs. And last but not least, if Zion Williamson could stay healthy, this starting lineup is absolutely disgusting. And McCollum, Ingram, Herb Jones, Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas, they have size. They have defense. And if you look at their defensive metrics, I actually thought this team, like just from a visual perspective, I thought this team was not good defensively. But you just look at plus and minus and stuff like that. But when you actually dig into their defensive metrics, they weren't bad, especially for a high-flying Western Conference team. So at plus 400, I just have them to beat the Mavs. The Mavs don't really scare me as much. I do think the Mavs hit their win total. I think a lot of teams hits their win total, but the price is just something that I love.
Yep, I like this. I think the Pelicans are a hugely high upside team, and also a low or a high downside team as well. They have a huge amount of variance. That all
Yes.
comes from Zion Williamson, who may play 20 games and may be first team All NBA. Like that's literal. That's within the range of possible outcomes for Zion. He's that talented. It's just a weird team to think about because we haven't seen those five guys in that starting lineup really on the floor together. And so I do think that defensively, they definitely have concerns. Like when your front court is Zion and Jonas Valanciunas, that limits how flexible you can be scheme-wise. But at the same time, like Herb Jones could be the best perimeter defender of the league this year. That's in the cards there. Jose Alvarado is an excellent guard defender. Larry Nance is a really good backup big off the bench defensively. So, look, they have pieces. I think that they can get to just being a slightly below average defense. And then they have the upside to be a top 3, top 5 offense in the league because they have so much firepower. So, I don't really know what to make of the Pelicans, but I do like betting on them. I wouldn't want to touch their win total just because with a team that has this much variance, I'd rather ride more of the upside, like the division, or if you can get bets on them to be, a top 4 seed in the West. I think that's in the cards as well. So those are the ways I look to play the Pelicans, but I agree they are very high upside. And Memphis, look, Ja Morant did miss 25 games last year, and they still got to 57 wins or thereabouts anyway. But I think Ja is a guy, to your point, where just with the way he plays, with how banged up he gets, I think you just have to treat him like Jimmy Butler in the regular season, who just misses 15 to 20 games every single year. So I think that Ja, he should play more than 57 games this year, but maybe not significantly more. And then Jaren Jackson being out is huge. He's their second best player, a legit defensive player of the year candidate. And then, losing DeAnthony Melton, losing Kyle Anderson, like these hurt because they had so much depth last year. So with you on the Pelicans, my favorite bet, I feel like a team that we're talking about all year. I've already ordered some merch, unfortunately. The Minnesota Timberwolves, plus 140 to win the Northwest. I view this as a 2-horse race between the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. Not buying the Blazers. They've got 8 players and only one superstar. And also with the Blazers, if Yusuf Nurkic goes down, they have no other tall people. They are done. So that's a concern when you're counting on Yusuf Nurkic, who's like the 74th best player in the NBA. And if he goes down, they're in big trouble. I think that for some reason, the Blazers are contractually obligated to have their 2 best players be small guards. So they move on from CJ McCollum, and now it's the Anthony Simons Joe who's just going to create all the same defensive issues next to Dame that CJ did. I think the Blazers are a strange team. I think they can get to 40 wins, but that's if things break right. And if things break right leads you to 40 wins, then you're not really going anywhere. So the Nuggets are definitely the threat to the T-Wolves. And I think the Nuggets have a huge ceiling. And I think that they're probably a bet to win the Western Conference at current prices, particularly if you can get anything bigger than plus 800. But regular season-wise, like Jamal Murray is going to be managed. Michael Porter Jr. is probably going to be managed. I don't trust Michael Malone with his bench units. I don't trust him to be, spacing out Murray and MPJ from Jokic and maximizing the rotation. Like he plays at least five bench guys together constantly. It's going to be the Bones Highland show. So I'd be a little bit concerned about just how hard they're going to go in the regular season. Nikola Jokic plays so many minutes every year. And I think that, that's not necessarily the best thing for this team. But what do you think of the Nuggets this year, Brad?
So I'm not as high on the Nuggets this year as I was last year, just because for them now the goal of the season is just to stay healthy, to kind of learn to work together. Like these players haven't played a significant amount of minutes together on the court and make it to the playoffs to make a run. So if you want to talk about any in-season bets, I almost leaned betting the under win total for the Denver Nuggets just for that reason. It's all about health because health is wealth. Last season, I was a lot higher on the Nuggets because I thought they could go a little bit with reckless abandon during the season, and they kind of did. But now, you're going to kind of have to manage these guys, just get them in the right situations to make a run.
Yeah, I think playoff-wise, even with all the kind of concerns about, what you can be defensively when Nikola Jokic is your center. I do think in terms of when it comes to playoff time, this team has a massive ceiling, and they should be considered closer to the Clippers and the Warriors than say, the Mavericks and teams like that at the lower end of the contender tier. But regular season, I just don't think this team's going to have huge incentive to win a lot of games, whereas the Timberwolves, they do. And that's why I like them at plus 140, is that I just think that organizationally, they need to win regular season games to save jobs, because they've gone all in with this Gobert trade. And also, I think, the idea that a lot of people have is that Rudy Gobert has come in as like the next piece of the puzzle next to Edwards and Towns. Like, no, Rudy Gobert is the best player on the Timberwolves. They brought in a guy who is their best player in the regular season. What he does defensively has more impact than any other player on that team had last year. Gobert is a superstar in the regular season. No one has his defensive impact across the league. That's why I like him for Defensive Player of the Year, because he's the most deserving candidate every single year. And it's just a matter of whether people want to vote for him because of the narrative. So I think that regular season-wise, this team is going to be a monster. They're going to be hugely incentivized to get wins. So that's why I like them at plus 140 to win the Northwest. We should briefly touch on the other two teams if we want, I guess, the Thunder and the Jazz, who I don't even know what their prices are, but their prices are you can have whatever you like. They're not going to win the division. I do think the Jazz might be a little frisky early in the season, but frisky as in, they might be on a 30-win pace for 25 games or so, and then it's all going to fall out. And the Thunder might be fun to watch with my guy Josh Giddey, but they're going to be fun. They're not going to win. All right, Brad, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those of you watching us on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please don't forget to subscribe and rate us. Everyone enjoy Commanders Bears. Do something with your family tonight, and we'll be back tomorrow.